The vision for what would become the World Trade Center began in the 1940s. New York's top business tycoons and politicians were behind the idea. The original plan was to build a single 70-story building. In 1962, the Port Authority of New York, today the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, chose Japanese-American Minoru Yamasaki as chief architect. Yamasaki's proposal called for the building facade of the Twin Towers to be sheathed in aluminum alloy with a framework of external steel. The World Trade Center would contain 7 buildings covering 16 acres of prime Manhattan real estate. Construction began on March 21, 1966. It would take nearly 4 years to top off the North Tower at 1,368 feet, and an additional 7 months to top off the South Tower at 1,362 feet. At the time, this made the Twin Towers the tallest buildings in the world. When the project was complete, 200,000 tons of steel was assembled, enough to make 1,600 Statues of Liberty. 425,000 cubic yards of concrete was poured, enough to fill 10 Hoover dams.
And the foundation, when it was being built, I worked on the foundation. And I came out of the hiring hall, and it was a huge foundation, the whole size of the site. And we were tying our rebar, and I looked up and I saw this big round tube. And I looked up and I says, wow, what the heck is that thing? Because it was hanging on tripods, huge tripods. And we were down, I guess maybe 120 feet or so. And they had done the slurry walls because the river would come in if they didn't put in protection, which the foundation walls were slurry walls. And they had just about completed all of them. And we were there now on a real foundation for the Trade Center. And looking at this tube, and I asked one of my fellow workers, what is that? And he says, that is the Hudson tubes. I says, wait a minute, that's subway cars? They actually had the tubes with the engineering was amazing. They had the tubes running with the trains coming in from New Jersey with the computers while we were building it. And they literally built the Trade Center around these tubes, and they never interfered with transportation.
To reach the top of the 110-story Twin Towers, 99 elevators were installed in each tower. The site even had its own zip code. 22 years after the completion of the towers, the World Trade Center would become the target of multiple terrorist attacks. February 26, 1993, a terrorist attack placed 1,200 pounds of explosives in a parking garage beneath the North Tower. The explosion blasted a crater 5 stories deep, killing 6 people and leaving more than 1,000 injured. September 11, 2001, the Twin Towers would be destroyed.
9/11 was a tough day for everybody in New York City, and I think the country and the world.
That morning was like any other, commuters scrambling to get to work, tourists enjoying the sights and sounds of the city. No one was prepared for the terror that would befall the world's greatest city. 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, bound for Los Angeles, was hijacked and flown into One World Trade Center, the North Tower. The New York City Fire Department was briefed about a plane crash involving the North Tower. Evacuations began in both towers. 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, also bound for Los Angeles, was hijacked and flown into Two World Trade Center, the South Tower.
The captain of Rescue 4 at the time, which is where I worked, was calling everybody to come in. So I got in my car, I started driving in. As I was driving in, I was listening to the news. I saw that another plane, I saw it come in and hit the other tower. So now we, as everyone knew, we were under some kind of an attack. Some kind of terrorism was going on. So got to the firehouse. We loaded up with gear. We commandeered a city bus. We drove in. We got in. Luckily for us, we got there after the second tower had fallen. It was basically, I would say, like to describe it, like when we pulled down West Street, we came down West Street on a bus. It was a biblical scene. It was like Armageddon. It was kind of like there was a silence to it where you really didn't hear it, but there was also, it was loud too, if you can understand that. As quiet as it was, you were hearing explosions here and there, like cars blowing up and stuff, I guess, in the basements from the fires. we had radios. We were trying to reach the guys that were working that day. Nobody was calling back. And then eventually we came to the realization that we lost. We knew we had lost a lot of guys, but later on in the day, we knew we had really lost a lot of guys. You know, and the number turned out to be 343. And that was just the firefighters. You know, there was police officers lost and thousands of civilians. It was a clean death blow.
For the first time in history, following the crash of the South Tower, the FAA ordered a nationwide ground stop, bringing all outbound flights to a halt. 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77, bound for Los Angeles, was hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. (10:03), United Airlines Flight 93 was hijacked and crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Passengers fought the hijackers to take control of the cockpit. Aboard Flight 93 was Bill Cashman, a member of Ironworkers Local 46 for 40 years. A native New Yorker, he was welding instructor at the Local 46 Apprentice School. Bill Cashman was an original builder of the World Trade Center.
I knew him pretty well for a long time on a personal level. He'd been around a long time, and he's an old West Side guy. And I was actually working with him. I was working with him on the Friday before 9/11. He had just left that week, and that was the week he was going on vacation. He was one of his hobbies was hiking, and he was on his way out west to go hiking.
10:28 a.m. The North Tower, the first to be built, was the last to collapse. As emergency rescue units converged from all over the city, they were joined by the ironworkers. Ironworkers volunteered to save what could be found, to comfort those who had lost so much, and to make a contribution once again to the city they loved. They helped to form a bucket brigade that worked to clear the rubble for 8 months. Working around the clock, volunteers passed 5-gallon buckets of debris down a line to medical responders and investigators who sifted through it looking for human remains and evidence.
We worked hand in hand because the buildings were steel and the steel was down and it was twisted. We had to elicit the help of the brothers from the ironworkers who, I will say, and anybody who else worked down here, they were the unsung heroes of this operation. They absolutely went above and beyond. There wasn't a place, a nook, a cranny, or a cave that we would go into that they wouldn't come in with us. And they were as brave as any firefighter or police officer that worked on the scene. And my hat's off to them. I'm forever grateful to them. I had some very, very unbelievable experiences with them over the next year. Some horrific sights and some horrific operations we had to do to remove people from being crushed and twisted around metal, and they were. I can't say enough about them. They'll always have a fond place in my heart, and all the brothers on the FDNY. And you go into any firehouse and any guy that was working down here at the time, and huge thumbs up for the ironworkers. You know, without them, we'd probably still be digging here. They were definitely shining stars.
Ironworker torches cut steel beams into more manageable sizes for removal. Construction around the city came to a halt as ironworkers walked off their jobs to help at the site.
So we went down to the Trade Center. I was there for 4 days on a pile, just doing a bucket brigade.
I made it down there, and we made it down to the armory, and all the guys from the local got on the bus, and the National Guard brought us in on one of their buses, and that's the way it was for a few days. And you know, I was only down there for the first few days before the jobs were given out to actual contractors. But I had the honor, really, the privilege of being able to help those first few days. And obviously it's something that's stuck in my mind, and I'll never forget.
Unbelievable. Downtown Manhattan was never quiet, and it was like a futuristic show, like watching an apocalypse. It was just so quiet, and the closer we got to the actual site, the debris was thickening. We were walking in dust, just a little bit of dust, and then it was an inch of dust and a couple inches, and the closer we got, the more and more. And then finally, when we made that last turn, I forget what street we were on, and we actually could see the site. It just froze me. Right now I'm still haunted by it. I just remember thinking, damn, there were 210-story buildings here. Now there's a hole. It was like I was transplanted to some place that wasn't real. And then all the while when I was working down that side, I took a week off from my job and I spent a week down there on cleanup. As we were working, every once in a while I would just stop and look around, and I didn't feel like I was even there, but I was, It was really odd. It was amazing. And to this day, I can still feel that feeling. To this day, this is very rare for me to talk about it. I have not ever watched anything on that, and I probably never will again. I just can't do that. But it was the eeriest I've ever felt in my life.
Each year on the anniversary of September 11th, thousands gather not only in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, but around the U.S. to read each name aloud and remember those who lost their lives on that tragic day.
Elaine Myra Greensburg.
Donald Freeman Green.
Gail R. Green.
James Arthur Greenlee Jr.
On the 10th anniversary of the attacks, the National September 11th Memorial was unveiled. It honors and offers reflection on the nearly 3,000 people killed during the attacks of September 11th at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and those who were killed in the World Trade Center bombing on February 26, 1993. The name of each is inscribed within a bronze border lining the memorial, never to be forgotten. 2 waterfalls and reflecting pools cascade 30 feet into the original foundation where the Twin Towers once stood. 8,650 tons of steel was fabricated for the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. Swamp white oak trees were harvested from within a 500-mile radius of the site, with additional trees from locations in Pennsylvania and near Washington, D.C. The trees were specifically chosen for their durability and array of leaf color. They symbolize hope, renewal, and the rebirth of a nation. Standing alone in Memorial Plaza is the survivor tree. Most of this calorie pear tree was crushed when the towers fell. It was one of the last living things pulled from the wreckage. It was originally planted during the 1970s at the World Trade Center site. When workers found the tree, it was reduced to a stump. After being nursed back to health, it now stands more than 30 feet tall, a living homage to those who lost their lives. Yards away from the World Trade Center site stands another survivor of the 9/11 attacks, St. Paul's Chapel. In the aftermath, it served as a place of rest, refuge, prayer, and consolation. The fence surrounding the church serves as a memorial where visitors leave notes and mementos. 22,000 tons of structural steel was used to build a new transportation hub. That's roughly twice the amount of steel used to build the new Yankee Stadium. The transportation hub will serve more than 200,000 commuters every day. At 1,776 feet, One World Trade Center is the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere.
I started working down at the World Trade Center, the foundation of Tower 2. I moved over to the Vehicle Security Center, Transportation Hub, and also on Tower 1. My experience working down here, I'll never forget it. It was very sacred to me. I felt like I was rebuilding my home, rebuilding my city after the devastation that we had down here, building our future, something that everybody's going to remember what came of 9/11 for the rest of our lives. My daughter will be able to look back at this and say my dad helped rebuild the New York City skyline. just the brotherhood with my fellow union brothers. You know, we see these guys more than we see our own families. The time that we spent together down here, we all became very close. We all did a lot of overtime hours. Some guys working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, away from their families. It was very, very hard, but as you can see behind me here, this is the finished outcome of Tower 1. And, you know, this is what America's about, rebuilding and overcoming obstacles and always coming out on top.
Working around the clock, more than 3,000 workers helped raise the entire World Trade Center complex.
I'm from San Diego, local 229, and I'm here in New York to be part of the new construction of the tower. I'm proud to be here and be part of it.
Local 433, out here welding up all everything, full pens, all the moment connections. Trying to get the job done.
I'm from local 229 San Diego. What I'm doing right here, I'm fitting up these big trusses and also welding.
The iron workers placed nearly 48,000 tons of structural steel into the reborn North Tower. Within the core of the building stands 47,000 tons of rebar supplied by Harris Rebar Barker Steel. More than 200,000 cubic yards of concrete was poured.
My primary focus down there was working on the core walls. We had the south core and the north core. I was working on the north core. Heavy walls, number 11, 6 inches on center. You got 20 bars horizontally, vertically in those walls. Rebar on the Q decks, number 4s, wire mesh. It was a heavy job. Ran a crew of about 40 men at its peak, maybe 45 at its peak to do the walls. And it was fun. I mean, there's nothing better than rebuilding, you know, a building in your town, in your country after the devastation of that being attacked by terrorists.
One World Trade Center reinforces 104 floors with 9 escalators and 70 elevators that are among the fastest in the world. The rooftop of One World Trade Center is identical in height to the original tower. At the base of the tower is a blast wall built of concrete to withstand 18,000 pounds per square inch, more than enough to stop a truck bomb. 60-foot-tall steel girders weighing 70 tons stand within One World Trade Center. 4 cranes were used during construction. 2 were internal climbing tower cranes and 1 external creeper crane. The cranes were specifically designed to climb at the rate of 2 structural steel floors per hour. A blue fire-resistant net, referred to as the cocoon, enveloped One World Trade Center to prevent tools and scraps from hitting those working below. The 408-foot spire atop New York's symbolic tower is a cable-supported antenna that echoes the torch held by the Statue of Liberty. It is this spire that brings the height of One World Trade Center to 1,776 feet. A reference to the year of America's independence. Once again, the World Trade Center rises, built by the hands that build America, the iron workers.